Okay, welcome to our show. After a ridiculous start, my microphone ran out of batteries, but I had some on hand. Today, we are talking about how to do Zoom breakout sessions for your Sunday services. And Zoom has been used a lot to replace the in-person fellowship and gatherings for worship leaders and churches around the world. And live streaming is part of that. And we're going to talk about how live streaming has helped connect so many organizations with their communities that maybe even farther flung than they originally knew. But now we're using Zoom as well to really increase what's possible. Julia, my moderator here, has been helping us out on the Zoom side. Thank you, Julia.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Live streaming in the age of COVID-19 is not an easy task.
So we're going to talk about using breakout rooms, and we're going to talk about why live streaming is so important and listening to folks on the chat room. For example, here someone from our team is actually talking about Paul has to change his batteries. No audio from Robert. Thank you guys. So sorry about that, but stuff happens. Man, you just got to keep on rolling. So we're going to talk about listening to the chat room on the live stream, asking folks to join a Zoom meeting to get more engaging and reach that new level. And I want to just take a moment to thank everybody who's here right now. We're going to have a fun time, a little bit of a tough start, but that's okay. I think we're going to have a great meeting. So here we go. And then finally, what can we do as far as using a breakout session to have smaller team building exercises, spiritual sharing sessions, and spaces where people can get to know each other a little closer outside of the large group. So that's going to be really fun and interesting. Now we're going to recap the past shows because we've had some really exciting and interesting shows over the past month. So we're going to recap those. We're going to go over a presentation from the week. And if anyone has any questions along the way, raise your hand. You can put them in the chat, or you can ask Julia to unmute you, and you can just ask a question anytime throughout this session. And then we'll have a group sharing session, and then we're going to actually try these breakout rooms, and it's going to be really fun. I wanted to mention that the graphics we're using now, I've been getting a lot of questions about how do you use them, because it's kind of quite interesting to be able to have a Zoom meeting next to maybe the pastor, next to maybe a moderator, like a worship leader, like Julia is below in full screen. And we're basically using some really great graphics, and I put together a guide on how to do it, and you can get that at streamgeeks.us/church. So if you're interested in learning how to do that, you can also get the PowerPoint of these presentations as well. I wanted to mention that we're still sending free copies of the Helping Your Church live stream book out to anyone who's interested. So we updated this with some new information on incorporating Zoom conferences into your live streams. So it's really interesting. So this show started when Michael Begeman from a church in Austin, Texas, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Paul, let's talk about church communications in the era of COVID-19. Should we be using Zoom meetings? Should we be using live streaming? Should we be using webinars?" And we both agreed that two-way communication is so important right now. And we started using more Zoom conferences in our live streams. And we talked about how you can have a worship leader secure the Zoom meeting and be a moderator and have a waiting list, a waiting room, and really secure the meeting. So we talked about all of that. The next show, and these are all available on YouTube, the next show talked about how do we accommodate these remote participants in Zoom? At what time is like half of our congregation going to be in person, and maybe the other half who are still, have to stay at home because they're higher risk, joining us via Zoom? And how do we accommodate both and engage both audiences? And we talked about, the audio that is required to do that, the audio routing. Then last week, we talked about tips for doing small group sharing, and we tested out the Zoom breakout rooms. And we talked about incorporating Zoom with OBS. And we actually just published another video on how to incorporate vMix with Zoom as well. And now today, we're going to really dig into these breakout rooms and how to use Zoom for church services, maybe after your church service, where you can break out into small groups, have pre-assigned attendees in each breakout room, and even giving the option to let people choose where they want to go and what they want to talk about. So that's the agenda for today. To start it off, there's a couple different ways to do this. And one is to have what's called open space collaboration. So you can have like 2 or 3 Zoom breakout rooms. They have a maximum of 25 people per room, depending on how many attendees and the license that you have. But you could have like 2 or 3 open space collaboration rooms where people can be a social butterfly and maybe move around those rooms that have specific topics, or people who are really engaged in a single room and they want to stay there. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do this is to have what we call virtual world cafe, where you're actually randomizing everybody into small groups, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 10 people in a group, and you're just randomly assigning them so that they can get into smaller groups and get to know each other better. So it's another way to have kind of small groups, is that randomization. So ask questions throughout this presentation. If anything pops up, ask your questions. I'm happy to answer them. And you can also see what other churches are doing in our Churches That Live Stream Facebook group, and you can share your experiences with us and others who are doing very similar things. So first, let's recap. So in the era of COVID, the new normal is that most people are joining worship services from home. At a time, it was a one-way broadcast, but we've all kind of found that we want more interactivity. And many of the churches that we've talked to say that, they've found that it surprises them how many members of their community are far flung and maybe even outside of their local community that have been joining, and they're getting to know people from all around the world. And a tip for you is that you might want to think about who is your tech-savvy worship leader who could be the Zoom moderator, and you could make them a host or a co-host of your meeting. We've talked a little bit about simple setups to connect your audio mixer into a camera that can connect directly to Zoom or a live streaming software. So we went over that in a past session, using the 3.5 audio output to plug into a camera, and use the USB connection with either Zoom or another software. We also talked about how the PTZ Optics USB camera models can be controlled via Zoom, so they can be remotely controlled from someone anywhere in the world. And then again, I'm going very quickly because we did this over the past 3 weeks already, but you can create an audio mix where not only do you take the audio from all of the microphones and band instruments and different things inside of the worship sanctuary that you have into a camera, into Zoom, into something like OBS or vMix or Wirecast, but you can also bring the audio from Zoom back into the worship service so that you're really connecting the folks in Zoom directly with the experience of speaking to the pastor. And we've talked about how to kind of moderate that and create an audio bus for that using an audio output from your mixer. So that's our recap. We're going to get right to the presentation right now, and then into these breakout sessions so everyone can kind of see and get an idea of how they work. So YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, these different places, they give you this maximum exposure for online audiences. So it's great to use the live stream to get your message out to them. But I think what a lot of us found is that we want this two-way communication, the ability to engage with a pastor or a worship leader, ask questions, let people know how we're feeling, share some personal messages. And that's what Zoom is great for. And then now that we've kind of established that, yeah, Zoom is great. 100 people joined Zoom. 100 people can't talk to each other at once. So Zoom is really a two-way communication, but there's too many people to have a good conversation. So now we're talking about breaking up these meetings into smaller, more meaningful spaces. So we're going from a public space, which is like YouTube, Facebook, and going to a more private, intimate space where people feel more comfortable sharing and getting to know others. So that's why we've created this little funnel that goes from chatting on the live stream on social media to joining the Zoom conference to breaking out and doing spiritual sharing. So this is just a little example of a 4-person room where 4 people are there. You could have one worship leader who's the host. And we do think that it's important to maybe plant a worship leader as a host in one of these spaces so that you can have someone that's talkative, someone who's prepared with a few icebreakers, and someone who knows what the exercises and agenda that you're planning to host in these breakout sessions is. So what is a breakout room? Before we go too far, a breakout room is a feature inside of Zoom. You have to have a Zoom professional license, and you need to enable breakout rooms on the Zoom dashboard, like the zoom.us dashboard on the internet, not in the software. It needs to be on your license, your management dashboard. Once enabled, you'll see this breakout rooms button here. And you do have the ability to allow the host to assign participants to the breakout rooms when the meeting is scheduled. So if you do want to have 3 or 4 breakout rooms, you can assign specific people to those breakout rooms. And when you go to a breakout room, you're going to see this message. It's going to say you're joining a breakout room and you're leaving one Zoom room and going into a smaller Zoom room with less people in it. So you click that button as the host, and we're going to do this together so everyone can kind of see how it works. And you can set up a specific number of Zoom rooms or breakout rooms with a specific number of people. You can manually or automatically assign these people to these breakout rooms. Now, once you have these rooms created, we've had a lot of questions about this. Can you move people around? Can you exchange people? And it's very easy to do so. So if you have a large group, let's say you have 100 members of your church who are in a Zoom meeting, and you have 25 in each room, and you want to make sure the specific families are together or a specific worship leader is in each, you can move and exchange people in between these as the host. So you do have some control there. You also have the ability to broadcast a message to everyone. So if you want to broadcast a message and kind of be the host from above, you can do so. And you can also set a time limit. So you can have a timer that goes out and says, hey, everyone, we're coming back in 5 minutes, for example. So that's what it looks like when you join a Zoom breakout room. Here's just a little bit of advice on these breakout rooms. If you have 200 people, you can have a maximum of 50 breakout rooms with 4 people each. If you have 400 people, you can have a maximum of 30 breakout rooms with 13 people. And if you have 500 people in your room, which requires the large meeting add-on license, you can have 20 breakout rooms with 25 people each. We talked to you guys last week, and everyone was really helpful sharing their experiences. A lot of people said like the number 10 is good because you don't know how many introverts or extroverts you're going to get. And if you do like 10, you know that you're going to have a nice mix. And some people have their camera on, some people have their camera off, some people are more talkative than others. If you have your camera off, I challenge you to turn your camera on. And the reason why is that 93% of communication is actually nonverbal. So it really, that's something that I feel like as a worship leader, you should be challenging your Zoom meeting participants to, lightly kind of engage them to show their face and be part of the community. So with that being said, we're going to get into these breakouts in just a second. Here's some ideas for your breakout sessions. One idea is to have an icebreaker question. And, one popular one is, do you love working from home or would you rather be in the office? Or is there a balance that you prefer? There's a whole list of great icebreaker questions that you guys can download. These are kind of like working from home virtual ones. What's the hardest part about working virtually for you? What's the easiest part? So there's
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to interrupt. I know you have great momentum going on, but John in the chat asked if attendees can self-select which breakout room they go to and then change rooms.
At this point, yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for asking, John. At this time, I have not found a way to do that. And I thought that you could make everyone a co-host and allow them that capability, but that is not true. As of today, the host must manage all of this. So that's kind of an issue. I wish it was better. And Robert Letcher, I see here, is asking for the password for the Zoom call. The password is Monday. So sorry, I probably could have shared that earlier. The password is Monday to get into the Zoom conference. And of course, we do the password so that we can kind of protect ourselves a little bit from Zoom bombers. A couple other ideas is virtual team building ideas. And we're going to try maybe one of these. But you can do virtual board games, and you can share your screen and kind of play play some games together, like crossword puzzle. You can do an online game like Pictionary or Office Trivia. And I'm going to show, if we have time today, CrowdPer, which is an interesting, really cool trivia game system that you can have small teams collaborate with. Another cool one is the desert island scenario. And Julia, I was thinking today we'd go with this one, which is, hey guys, you're getting into small groups. How about everyone shares what they would bring to a desert island if they could only bring, one or two things. So it's a fun sharing exercise. That's an easy one. One that takes a little bit more preparation, but it's really good, is the personal fact guessing game. And what you do is you gather facts about all the meeting attendees and you put them in a list and you have people guess whose facts go with who. So that's another fun one. And then there's the picture sharing game where everyone can share pictures from the weekend. And the personal sharing is a big part of getting to know each other. And I'm just going to share this graph and I'll leave you guys with this to think about. This is a graph that leads up to a transformational experience. A transformational experience would be described as a spiritually moving experience, an experience where you've had a reaction so profound that it's inspiring and it makes you aspire to achieve your achievements, and it's unforgettable, right? That would be like the best case scenario. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but in order to invoke that type of transformation, there are some steps that have been, studied that we can look at. And obviously you're going to need attention from your audience. They're going to need to focus. If they're not focused, they're not going to get through the rest of these, steps here. And then we're going to want to get some engagement. And this is where these small groups become a little bit better because people are willing to engage a little bit more. And this is where those worship leaders can start to maybe read from the scripture or have a prepared educational presentation, or maybe it's just a short little educational agenda that's establishing the exercises that might be shared within the breakout sessions. A little bit of entertainment can go a long way. And inside of entertainment, a little bit of fun, some enjoyment, maybe some shared happiness, some laughter. And then what we're trying to do is invoke a reaction. Maybe we're trying to get down to some of the desires or the commitments that people want to make in their lives. And that can be provoked by some changing context and some of the educational and entertainment. There's another word called edutainment, this process of educating and entertaining at the same time. And then ultimately, an amazing, powerful worship leader would be able to get someone to have a transformation. And I think that there's a lot of pent up need for, communication and social facilitation. And I do think that this is all very possible. So this is where the breakout rooms come in my opinion. And another way to look at this, because I know this is information from Joseph Pine's Experience Economy book. And here's just one other way to think about it. Think about the entire service having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'd like to challenge you to think, hey, the live stream isn't necessarily the end, right? The two-way communications, the breakout sessions, I feel like should be closer toward the end. And through this entire process, you would hope that the worship service, the live stream portion, is enticing. And it prepares people to enter, right? And engage. And then you can allow the pastor to exit. That's okay. Making a good exit is an important, powerful moment where you can establish the memory of the event, impress and surprise, even thrill and intrigue. I feel like I'm reading poetry here. But then the most important part is the extension, to extend and push the limits and go the extra mile and extend the experience. And that's what can happen in these Zoom conferences. So I'm going to leave it there, even though I think we have some extra stuff to say. So does that make sense to everybody? And I'd love to hear from everyone about it. Bob's saying, preach, Paul, preach. I think does it make sense that what we're talking about today, guys? And does anyone want to add anything to this? We're going to jump into breakout sessions in a little bit. So I'm excited to see how that goes, where we're going to test some of this stuff out.
Paul, you can name those breakout sessions. right? So when we did that AV happy hour with Chris Netto, he like, I think I would, there was like a gin and tonic room, and there was, so.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that's a good idea. And I think we should do that.
So like if you wanted to have, like, for instance, at least with my church, there's lots of different committees that we have. So, you might want to have a meeting, name the breakout session based on that committee. There's like a finance and budget committee, and then there's a committee for cleaning and flowers and things like that. So.
Oh yeah, that's such a great idea. And that goes along with the there's two different approaches. And Julia, I think that's such a great approach. So the one approach is to name these rooms, like the special interest rooms, if you will, and allow people to kind of say, hey, which room do you want to go in? And they can do that. And then the other approach is the randomized approach. I actually like what you mentioned, Julia, of really kind of having some organization so people know kind of where they belong, and they form these, miniature families or miniature groups where they know each other's faces and get to know each other well. The randomized one, it can be used interestingly. It gets new people to meet other people. But I think you're right, Julia. Why don't we go ahead and create 3 rooms? And we'll let everybody choose which ones they want to go to, or would you rather just randomize it? We have 50 participants, so we could just randomly pick 5 rooms of 10 and just have an exercise where everyone does the desert island exercise where we just kind of get to know each other that way.
I think for today's purposes, it's probably pretty easy to randomize. And we have a couple of votes in the chat for randomization for today.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that then? And I think we'll probably spend about 5 to 10, maybe 10 minutes in these small groups of 10, and then we'll come back and we'll answer questions that hopefully we've stimulated throughout the presentation. So everybody can kind of watch as I do this, by the way, because I know that this might be new. It was definitely new for me. So I have this create breakout room button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically assign 44 people to, okay. It even tells you how many people. So we want to do 11. Okay, so we'll do 11 participants to 4 rooms. And we're going to do the desert scenario, sharing scenario. And we'll see how this goes. All right, guys. So we'll quickly share some things with everybody. And then we'll come back and we will, we'll have a Q&A session. Okay. All right, here we go. So I've created the rooms. They're all open. Everyone has been assigned to a room. So everyone's about to go, guys. Here we go. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unmute myself over here. So now I'm inside of a small group sharing session. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Danny. Hi, Gil.
Hey.
Okay, I'm off mute. Hello.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
Let me change my camera input here.
Okay.
There we go.
So Paul, are you just in this one room, or are you're just in one room right now, right?
Yeah, so I'm just in this room currently with you guys.
Okay.
He's
So
not God. He can't be everywhere at the same time.
This is the best one.
And as host, you can go to another room?
Well, technically, as host, which I do see, so I have 2 computers. So this computer that I'm on now is joined with you guys, and then the host computer is actually over there. And I can see that there's like 2 people that joined late, and they're just sitting in the room over there. But they joined late. What do you want me to do?
That's their problem. Like people at church, go sit in the back row, right? And actually, you sit in the front row.
You're actually hitting some
front
of the
row.
very issues that I've been encountering. Is like you have to constantly monitor, because then you're going to have to manually place somebody into a room. So it's just one of
Yes.
the challenges of people not being able to self-select.
It is challenging.
Yeah.
And you definitely need to have a worship leader running it for sure.
So can you assign it to a co-host?
Unfortunately, no. You can have a co-host that can mute and unmute people, and they can do a lot of great things, but they can't seem to control the breakouts.
Wow.
So that's been kind of an issue for us because it seems like that's what you would really want.
Seems like that defeats the purpose of a co-host.
But you can assign a co-host to each of the rooms, can you not?
You can. You could
As
do
host, you
that.
make that assignment.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but host must be licensed. So you have to have a license for each host.
Or a co-host, right?
Yeah. Co-host.
Co-hosts don't need a license.
Oh, really?
That's my experience.
Yeah, I would say you're right. You would need to have a license to be the host. Yeah, but I think there can only be one host at a time.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think so.
Yeah, we use the co-host without the license, but that person is limited to what they can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. I wish that you could have like two hosts or more, but you can only have one host. So and unfortunately with breakout rooms, now you can pre-assign people to be in specific breakout rooms, which is nice.
Can you pre-assign a few people and then let the others go random?
Yes, you can.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. So
Yeah,
you can mix an assignment.
Yeah.
So if you wanted somebody to lead a particular conversation in each room, you can put those people in the rooms and let other people come in.
Yes. So when you go
That's
to your
very
Zoom
nice.
dashboard, you need to enable breakout rooms, obviously. And then under that, there's a little checkbox that says, allow the host to pre-assign.
Okay.
So that's pretty nice. I don't think we really have to do the desert sharing exercise. That was just kind of like an idea, because I do think as a host, one of the most important things is framing the structure of what the breakout room will be. So when people get there, they can have a positive experience and they've been kind of primed for the experience.
We've used breakout rooms in our church. We have a fellowship time at the end of the worship service. And then we divide the people up from the congregation into groups of roughly 8 to 10 in a breakout room. But then we just let them chat. We kind of, before they do that, kind of give them the instruction. It's easier to carry on conversations 8 at a time rather than 50 or 60 people all in the same room, all trying to talk at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you assign them randomly, or did you just?
We assigned them randomly so far, but I think it would be helpful to put each of the worship leaders in different rooms, because they want to ask questions of the musicians, for example, and then they get a chance to do that rather than them all winding up in the same room.
That's a good idea.
Have you ended up leaving them all in that same room the whole time, or do you reassign midway through?
Well, we haven't tried it yet, but I think you can move people around as host. You do that.
Okay, just curious.
So you could do that. The feedback from the
Are there any
times
other
going to say the feedback we've had from when we
Sorry.
broke up the whole group into
Gil?
breakout rooms has been very positive.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Are there any other ways that anybody here has used breakout groups besides just randomization or with specific assignment to them?
Those are the only two methods I've come across so far. That's why I was asking earlier if people can self-select, because I get a lot of situations where, you know, it's almost like you have to dedicate a person to just sit there and monitor and plan and know exactly who goes where. And if they accidentally come out, you got to put them back in. And I'm really looking forward to the day that you can self-select and move between rooms or do something. Those are the only two methods I've seen. Anybody else?
Does the meeting have to be active in order to start assigning people?
You can pre-assign in advance. Like I was able to pre-assign some people that I'd set up as like panelists and things like that.
Okay.
But they have to have been like invited and registered, because otherwise you don't even have a record of them yet.
Okay.
Well, like for us here, we probably all just came onto this without a registration, so there's no way to pre-assign.
Okay. So once you've created a meeting, if you know there's a purpose, you've got 4 rooms with 4 moderators, you can go ahead and pre-assign.
Yeah, and you can pre-assign ahead of the meeting if you actually have registrations, but otherwise you're doing it on the fly.
Okay.
And so by registration, I mean, we're not talking that people have to have a paid account. They just need to have an account with Zoom is what you're saying, right?
Or I haven't actually used this. It's my understanding it's the registration process where you can have people register for the Zoom event. And that's not even, it's certainly not a paid account. I'm not even sure it's a Zoom account per se, but it might be.
Okay. Okay. No, I was part of a breakout room one time, and it wasn't church related, but it was a breakout room that was more like, you know, some different icebreakers, you know, kind of a thing. And so kind of like I think Paul was talking about, you know, using some of those kinds of things. And it was just, you know, that you have a time limit of like 1 minute, and then at the end of that time limit, it's automatically going to put you, or does it? I think it automatically puts you back into the main room at the end of that time limit on the breakout group.
That's exactly right. You can set a timer, and then it just kind of, the interesting thing about it, I don't know if you do other, you know, live facilitation, sometimes it's hard to get the groups to come back on time. You always have stragglers. With this, it's just cut and dry. It's like you got 30 seconds left. Back in the big room.
Yeah, and you're back.
Yeah. And you don't have travel time, which means now you have to build in bio breaks.
It's a separate room.
I'm just curious, do you all have access to the like share screen capability? Like if we were in a collaboration session, can you all do a share screen right now?
Looks like it.
Yeah, it looks like it to me too. Everybody else, yeah.
Mine shows green, but I clicked on it and nothing, so they must still, oh no, there it goes. It just took them pop up. Yeah, I could share my screen if I wanted to right now.
Okay, good deal. And it looks like we've got a whiteboard that we could share, so I'm going to share whiteboard. And presumably you can all see me scribbling on a whiteboard.
Sorry about that, I accidentally did mine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Wow, that was pretty cool.
Okay.
Has anybody in here not used the whiteboard feature before? Okay, so everybody has. Okay. What's that?
I don't tend to find a specific use for it. I tend to do things in other ways, like whether it's mind map tools or just even documents. If we're collaborating, we're catching what people say, kind of like an electronic flip chart. So have others used the whiteboard successfully?
I've not really used it for anything yet, and so I was kind of curious to see if anybody had used it for anything specific. I mean, I could see it being like something brainstorming. If you have something on the screen that you're sharing that people could kind of scribble around on it, make notes, or, kind of to highlight things for other people. But
Yeah.
I haven't felt real compelled to use it yet for anything specific.
Likewise. I think one of the challenges is you spend more time focusing on trying to make the darn scribble legible.
Right.
And, whereas if you had a dry erase and you were at a whiteboard, you could do it pretty easily. So I think it might be one of those technologies that gets more in the way than it offers.
Maybe with a tablet and a pen might be better off.
Besides the whiteboard, you could put up a document and then use a pen to underline or to highlight things or to make some other visual changes.
Yes.
However, if you somehow move the document, those markings don't move with it. So they're really on your screen, not on that document.
Yeah, so you have to do a screen capture to keep it.
If you want to keep it, yeah.
I mean, does anybody here use other tools like doing breakouts? Anything else you've found that you think is really useful?
I've tried the polls before, just to see, and of course you have to go and preset those polls. You can't. I don't recall that you can make one up on the fly. I think you have to go and have it pre-made before you get going into the Zoom.
Okay, and I think like you can go, let's try something. If you bring up your participants, for me it was Alt-U. I'm on a Windows PC, so that brought up all the participants. We can see the like 10 of us or so. It looks like you can like raise a hand, say yes or no.
Yeah.
So you could do kind of a mini poll. You're not capturing it or keeping it. There's no data, no analytics to follow. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. You could kind of like, everybody, how many, raise your, or do a yes if you've used Zoom for a breakout in the past, and do a no if you haven't. Okay. So quite a few people have done it.
Yeah, it's a good way to take kind of just a quick, simple poll just to get an idea of where people are with something.
But it doesn't persist. No data is captured.
Right. I mean, either way, you're still like with this from a teaching standpoint, you're gaining participation of the audience in one way or another. Even if you were to have people show, okay, everybody, thumbs up, thumbs down, or, right here, let's take a poll. Where are you on this? Show us on your meter or whatever, or 0 to 10. And I've done that kind of stuff too, initially to kind of get people engaged in the beginning, so people are invested into, more participation and that sort of thing. And so that nobody's like just sort of sneaking in and flying under the radar. We want everybody engaged. And I think it makes everybody comfortable early on in the whole thing to feel like, okay, I'm in this.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. So this thing called reactions, do you all see that down on the bottom as well?
Yeah.
I've never used it. It's got like a thumbs up and a clapping. I'm going to do a thumbs up. Do you all see it? Because I don't.
Yeah, you can see on mine. You'll see it on everybody else's, I think. Well, I should see it on
okay.
I have my thumbs up.
It's overlaid on my video, and it goes away after like 10 seconds.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna go back to the main room now. You ready?
Okay, Paul.
Okay.
All right, here we go. And I think it'd be great to share kind of what some of our takeaways with the group. Here we go. Boop. There we go. Okay, so it does a little 60 seconds countdown timer.
Yeah. I'll just click on return to main session.
Okay. So while we're doing that, I'll show you. I'll share one tool that I do use. So we're going to probably get cut off in a moment here, but let me show you screen 3. And have any of you used mind mapping tools in the past?
No, is this Microsoft?
So this is
really
one. Cool. It's MindJet. It's one that I find is kind of great if you're, these are the ideas, and here we're going to kind of do the intro. Idea number 1, idea number 2. Now the cool thing is you can kind of move these things around, promote them to be their own things. the great thing is it's a way of kind of doing electronic flip charts.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of these out there. Some are free, some are online. But so mind mapping, I find, is kind of a neat visual way when you're.
All right, we're back. Apparently, that was a really great session for a lot of people. So I'm very excited to hear what people think. So is Julia back?
I am back, and we had a great session, Paul. We learned a couple of things. So one of our participants had their audio on in one breakout session and their video in another. So that might be an interesting topic of conversation to talk about there.
Wow. Well, you know what I was
thinking? He was on an iPhone and a desktop, so that's kind of what happened. Zoom viewed him as people, right? So
wow, so you have to have your audio and video in one place. That's funny. Well, what I was thinking, Julia, is that I was thinking if we could do kind of like takeaways, like if anyone wanted to share something that they just learned in the breakout that was like a good takeaway from their session. And I was going to just ask my new friend, John Bartkus, if you would like to start maybe, because John has been using this in the past. John, what did you think?
So I found this very useful. Certainly the topic caught my eye. I've used the Zoom rooms for, we tried them for some church breakouts. We've been using the regular Zoom for coffee hour. But I learned a couple people were doing the randomizing and letting people kind of go off in smaller groups. So we're going to try that. I was curious whether they kind of in the middle said, okay, 20 minutes, coffee hour with one table, and then we're going to bring you and randomize you to another set, but not yet. So that's another idea. We practiced as a group. We played a little bit with the reactions, and then it's not really voting per se, but if you do the Alt-U and you show the participants, you can kind of do a yes, no, or raise your hand. So we played a little bit with those. Frankly, I'm looking forward to as Zoom expands capabilities and do things like self-selection of rooms. So I'll leave it there.
That's a good one. That's such a big feature since ever since we've been talking about this, everyone's been asking for that. So they must be getting that feature. But thank you for sharing. John, I didn't really realize that little the voting capabilities of the thumbs up, thumbs down, just to give a quick pulse of where everybody is. That's a great tip. We'll have to add that to the presentation for next week. What a great idea. I'm glad we dug into that.
I think one just quick follow-up on that is it can get the quick pulse of the group, but it's not a persistent poll. There's no data. It's not going to save. So just if you're after something, it's going to vaporize as soon as you do it. I
see. Yeah, because right here we have the polls option in the center. I don't know if you guys can see that there, where we could actually, have more data. But that was, as you said, John, that was more of just a, hey, attendees, yes or no, and you can look at that attendees poll and kind of see where people are at. Was there anyone else who wanted to share kind of what they learned in their breakout session? Julia had an interesting one that was almost.
Cynthia and I were discussing. I don't know if she's still here. She's from a parish, a church in Washington D.C. area, and she said her husband's been doing the streaming for over a year, so they were able to just jump on board when the pandemic hit. But they're, newer to Zoom, and now they're trying to figure out all these different roles. And what she and I discussed was that Zoom's a great task for a volunteer who maybe doesn't have a ton of technical skills, but it's very manageable. So you can leave the streaming to OBS or vMix or some of the more technical audio and visual aspects to 2 or 3 volunteers who are really well versed in that area. And then somebody else can jump in and manage the Zoom and the participation that way. So she thought that perhaps going forward, that might be a way that they would like to proceed as well.
That's a great point. I think that that's what's so great about Zoom is that there's a lot of people who can, it might not be the most technical that could probably, watch some of our videos and some of the Zoom sessions, and it's an intuitive enough tool that almost anybody can pick it up. So that is a great point. Actually, I think Cynthia is here because.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah, Zoom is very intuitive, and feel free. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to comment or not, but I think that story that you shared can resonate with a lot of folks.
Victor is looking forward to learning more about Zoom. Who else did we chat with that was, now here's Gil. Hey, Gil, would you mind sharing some of your experiences that we talked about? Your church has been using the Zoom breakout sessions for a while now.
We've done it probably about 3 Sundays. We first started out with not doing it, and then we said, hey, let's try the breakout rooms. We have a fellowship time at the end of our worship service, and then we've taken a group of, typically tends to be about 60 to 70 people online, and split it up into smaller groups of about 7 per group. And so we typically run 7 to 10 per group. So you tend to run 8 or 10. We haven't really given anything in the way of small group exercises. We just let them chat. And then our experience has been, if you run it about 15 to 20 minutes, it's pretty good. People haven't run out of steam yet, but then we bring them back into a big group, and that way they can chat with other people that weren't in their small group they want to ask questions of. And during that time, then the attendance sort of kind of starts peeling off because people are sort of at the point where they need to go and do something else anyway. But the feedback has been very positive in that. So I think we'll continue doing it that way.
Well, thank you for sharing. It was so great to hear that your church is doing it, and others can kind of learn. I understand you're kind of just randomizing because, like you said, right, there's too many people in a group when there's 100 people in the group, and a lot of people want to ask questions to the musicians. They want to ask questions to the worship leaders. And, you got to break them out into smaller groups to have a more meaningful conversation.
Yeah, in fact, we haven't assigned anybody yet. It's all been random, but we thought we would try assigning the musicians and the worship leaders to different groups so that they can then have a chance to ask those kind of questions. So.
Well, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I'm really glad we had 4 really nice breakout sessions. It's such a great learning experience. Julia and I are trying to design more interactive sessions. And this to me makes me feel so happy. Not only does it kind of fill my heart a little bit with my need for socializing, which has been kind of restricted with the social distancing, but also, it's just great to see, this used to be just a one-way live stream. And now it's so much more. It's a large meeting, but then there's small breakouts. And there's actually an audience on Facebook and YouTube that got to actually come along for the journey. Lewis is asking for the password. It's Monday. Yeah, so I apologize. We have the password on there just to protect. Willow Productions is asking. It's always Monday, but just to protect against maybe somebody who we're not quite sure who they are joining in.
And I think that's a great point. So looking sort of at the overall process for this, your congregation, probably you have an email list for everyone. You can send out an email in advance to announce that there's going to be a Zoom meeting following the online stream and the service, so that you don't necessarily want to give out a password on social media, because then you are putting a Zoom password out there to the world. So it's a completely public broadcast. So what Paul, just to reiterate what he was saying, you want to make sure that your Zoom meetings are private and secure. And then that way you can ensure that through an email exchange.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the live stream is different because, that's a one-way thing. No one can join your live stream and then share their screen. So with Zoom, you have to be just a little bit more careful. And so we just have a couple more minutes here. If anyone has any questions about something we presented. Okay, Alita is raising her hand. I can see. Hi, Alita. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I have a question. I'm the minister of music at my church and the choir president, and I'm learning Zoom, but I wanted to know how are others using Zoom for that with their musicians and for choir members?
Okay, yeah, and I'm happy to take that question. And if anyone else wants to join in, please do so. Cynthia, keep your eyes on the road if you're driving, or pull over.
I know.
I just want to make sure you're safe over there.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Where are you calling from, by the way?
Illinois.
Illinois. Okay. Cool. Well, one question we get a lot is, hey, can everybody sing on Zoom, and can we have a choir going on? And that is not possible. There is a software called Jamulus that we're looking into that supposedly can merge a lot of singers and musicians together in one platform. And then you can actually bring it into Zoom. So it's something we're trying to learn about, but no one that I've talked to has had a good experience trying to have, musicians playing from all around the world. Now, with that being said, you could definitely have a musician play a song and then have another musician have a song and take turns. That is totally okay, and people can laugh and cry and clap and applaud, and that's fine. But trying to merge a bunch of musicians together, the latency and the issues with audio coming on and off and audio echo cancellation, it doesn't seem to do very well on Zoom.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Thank you.
Sure, and stick around for upcoming shows, because we get that question so much, that there is something called Jamulus that supposedly helps musicians jam online. And I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but because everyone keeps asking about it, we're going to try to figure that out and cover it in an upcoming show.
And I just put the link. I put the link in the chat for Jamulus.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Good luck. Be safe.
We have a couple newcomers who just joined, so if you have a question, let us know. We're really coming to the end here, but I still wanted to give everybody a chance. If there's a last question, you can raise your hand with the Zoom chat, or you can physically raise your hand. We can see you, and we're happy to answer some questions. Okay, Cynthia and Benji. Okay, Cynthia, how about you start? Hi, Cynthia.
All right. Hi. I'm calling from Washington, D.C., and Julia relayed my question. And I think these are actually two future session suggestions. One is on having remote production dispersed remote production of a service, recognizing that we're not in the same place. So how should we set that up, and what are some tools and what are some strategies that people are using? And then the other one is, I'm glad you're talking about a music option, because that's of course a great part of a wonderful worship. And so whatever we can learn and share about strategies to have musicians and singers in different places.
Well, let's make that the next session then. So we'll call it, musicians and, online worship. And we're going to make that our next Monday session. And then I really think you're right about the dispersed remote productions and ways to do that. It could get technical, so we'll try to think of some simpler ways to do that. But thank you. And I think you're echoing, what a lot of people have been asking about, which is the musicians and how do we bring them together. I do think it's possible to have 2 or 3 musicians come together through this thing called Jamulus and actually play together. So it could be really, really cool. So I keep hearing about it. And I know there was a church a couple weeks ago that is doing it. So I'm interested. All right. Well, let's go to our next person. Benji, I saw you were raising your hand there. How are you doing, Benji? I see you're in the car. Let me unmute you here. How you
I
doing?
am, but I'm doing good. Thank you. Keeping my eyes on the road, but listening to all the great content. So thank you so much. The one question I had was regarding the breakout rooms. I know in our session we talked about a little bit of the host or the person who has the full account, and other people wanting to be the ones filling in for co-host or things of that nature. Do you need a certain level to have those breakout rooms for Zoom? And second, like subscription level. And then second, for the host to grant access to other people to be hosts. I just want to confirm that it could be anybody. They don't have to have any kind of account. As long as they're in the meeting, they can be turned into the host, and the person who was the host can leave, and that other person can manage the meeting moving forward.
Well, that is an interesting question. So I'll try to answer some of this. For one thing is that if you have a free account, your meeting will be closed in 40 minutes. So you really got to go up to the $15 a month account, which is the ability to have unlimited length meetings. And with that unlimited length, you have the ability to enable breakout rooms. It's not enabled by default. So once you have that professional account, you go on to zoom.us, you log in, you search the extra meeting options, and you need to enable breakout rooms. So then you have the option as the host to do that. Only the host will see the breakout room button that you can sort of see right here, and that button opens up all the breakout rooms. So only the host, not even a co-host, can do that. So co-hosts cannot join or cannot manage a breakout room. You can have everybody be a co-host, anybody you want. Now, if you make someone else a host, you can pretty much make anybody else a host. But if that person doesn't have a Zoom professional license, then the meeting now has the limitations of whoever that person is. So if you've got a Zoom professional host, you make somebody else the host and then you leave, then it's going to be restricted to